Your journey has been an interesting one up to here. You've questioned so much more than those around you. You've even questioned yourself as to how you could have grown into these thoughts. Am I crazy? When did I begin to think differently? Why do people in general appear so limited in their thought process? Rest assured, you are not alone. The world is slowly waking up to what you already know inside, yet can't quite verbalize. Welcome to the Spiritual Dope Podcast. The show that answers the questions you never even knew to ask, but needed the answers to. Questions about you, this world, the people in it. Most importantly, how do I proceed now moving forward? We don't claim to have all the answers, but we sure do love living in the question. Time for another hit of Spiritual Dope with your host, Brandon Henley. Let's get right into today's episode.
Can you hear my husband doing dishes in the background? Should I tell him to stop?
You never tell your husband to stop doing dishes. That doesn't even make any sense.
Well, it's the stuff of the family, so
Right on. No, he's good. Should be good. Or should be good. Says I'm just pulling up the conversation here. Are you down in Virginia right now?
I am. Yeah.
Awesome.
Got my
Right outside of.
It's warm.
It's good. It's gorgeous, right? I'm up here in Philadelphia area, so we're not too far apart.
My mother-in-law's in Allentown, and we're going to be driving up there this weekend.
Oh wow! Yeah. You're not too far.
With the weather that's coming to the Northeast.
We'll see. We'll see what happens. You never know, right? It's weather report's always 50-50, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, we used to live in Boston, so every time they say the Northeast is going to get hit with snow, we laugh. We have a little moment of Schadenfreude, and then we move on.
Yeah, you guys probably got nailed up there.
Okay. It's calling for a foot of snow, so
yeah,
that's why I was asking.
Not for us.
For the Northeast is what it said. So.
Like above, that's above us. That's, we don't qualify. We don't qualify for that much. But, okay, is there anything in particular you want me to hit on today? This is probably going to go out actually a little later this year. I'm pulling together a number of, shamans and whatnot. I'm doing some theming this year versus just kind of a whole bunch of random conversations. That's what I thought. I thought so. Okay.
Yeah, so Shaman.
Yep.
Not Shaman. Makes me sense.
Shaman. Yep. I remember you let me know that last time. Yep.
No, you're right. We did talk.
Okay. Yeah.
I have a book coming out.
Okay.
Called The Overachiever's Guide to Nailing Your Spiritual Growth in Record Time. So.
Okay. So we'll talk about that. Make sure we hit on that some. Okay. Well, cool.
Yeah. I talk about the stages of healing, which is actually included in the book, so we can talk about that as part of it too.
Okay.
Jeff just made me falafel. So
awesome.
Great, but it had some dairy, so I'm like, hey.
We'll overcome it. I'm sure we'll overcome it. So I will get us going. I'm gonna use and is it Kelly?
Yep.
All right. I'm gonna use your bio.
Your name, because that's my husband's last name.
Is it really?
Yeah.
That's interesting. All right, you ready?
Give me one more second to clear my throat here.
Sure.
Okay.
You're feeling good?
I think I'm good to go.
All right. Let's do we'll do something fun today. Well, I don't know how fun it is, but we'll see.
You doing fun?
We're gonna do fun for a second. Maybe.
Okay.
Maybe fun. We'll see if we can get it to go. We got the tuning forks for Christmas, right? So we'll start off. We'll get it going. All right. Hey there, Spiritual Dope. Thanks for joining my guest here today, Kelle Sparta. She is the Spirit Doctor. She is a transformational shaman specializing in helping focused doers optimize their success and minimize their stress. She combines personal growth with energetic tools to create a holistic approach to your personal evolution. If you're looking to succeed at personal growth the way you succeeded in other areas of your life, then Kelly's the person to talk to. She's the co-host of the popular Spirit Sherpa podcast, listed on the top 25 metaphysical podcasts not to miss in 2021, according to FeedBurner, and she is the founder of the Sacred Power and Purpose Mystery School. Kelle, thanks for being on today.
Oh, I'm thrilled to be here, Brandon.
Awesome. So I usually like to start these off with the whole idea that you and I were, I think in shamanism, where the hollow bone, is that right? Where, spirit kind of flows through us and, to wherever it needs to go. And we're kind of the vessels to hopefully heal people, right? And through this podcast, there's going to be somebody listening today that is going to be healed basically through your message, right? What's that message today that's coming through?
Well, I think right now the message that's coming through is be kind to yourself. And the last couple of years have been really hard. And I don't think people realize exactly how hard, because how hard is it? We're sitting in our houses and, we're hanging out at home. And I mean, that can't possibly be traumatic, right? Except that, there's this constant threat of death outside your doorstep. And there's this, complete lack of normalcy in your life, and the death of your experience of life that you were used to for 2 years, right? So yeah, it's traumatic. And, this is why you're seeing all the Karens showing up right now. It's because everybody who doesn't know how to process their trauma is just becoming a Karen. And they're just letting it out all over the place because they're going, And ultimately, when we're in controlling behaviors, which is what all the Karenism is, it's because we're feeling unsafe. And so, before you become a Karen, if you're in that mode of, I must get what I need, right? Which is what precursors the Karen mode. Go back to, how are you feeling unsafe? How can you feel safer? It isn't about controlling the people around you. It's about controlling your own experience. And so when you can step into that, that's when life gets easier.
100% right. Being able to control your own experience is actually, right before hopping onto this conversation with you, speaking to my wife about, something similar, right? Just, over the past couple of years, just myself, it's like, there are these certain things that can weigh you down, but if you take a step back, take a look at them again, you can just totally reframe it. And most of the times realize that these things they're kind of trivial, right? The thing that you thought was like ruining your life is like, I don't know, like, you're a hanging nail, right? And so being able to kind of gain control of that scenario, that internal situation, and being able to take care of that, it's been a lifesaver for myself. And I love what you're saying there is that, you're feeling unsafe. And again, we actually just had this conversation today because the kids are in school and they've just now been able to take off their masks at school. So I said, well, that's got to be a weight off their shoulders, something, right? Because
terrifying.
Well, I guess you're right.
How much they bought into the need for the mask.
And my younger one did it seems like. But I mean, so my thought was, when you're seeing these masks all the time, to your point, you're looking outside, all you see is like pending doom and death. And if you have to look up every day and you see these masks everywhere, that's a reminder that shit's a mess out there, right? And having to see that all the time is making you feel unsafe as well, and having to do that for 2 years, even though you're like, oh, I feel fine. No, you don't. No, you don't. So now, so what are some things? I mean, just off the top of this, right? What are some things that we can do if you're feeling unsafe to kind of get control of that? What do you suggest?
Well, I mean, part of it is just looking around you and going, am I actually unsafe? Because in many cases, the answer is no, I'm not unsafe. I'm fine. There's nobody coming to get me, and, the world isn't coming to an end today. Although, the helicopters are coming to get me. I don't know if you can hear that in the background. But
I hope they're on time.
Yeah,
I hope they're on time.
Maybe it's Air Force One coming to get me. Who knows?
For sure.
That's what I get for having my windows open.
Sorry, it's a beautiful day.
The first thing you want to do is just focus on what's true, right? Because we often feel unsafe even when we're not, right? And then the next thing is to ask yourself, how important is this really, right? Because usually when we get triggered and upset by something, it's because it's not because of the thing that's in front of us. It's the thing that has been triggered inside of us. And then we cascade it and say, and this time, and that time, and that time, and that time, and that time. And then this person gets to be catharsis for all of those times. It's just like, I'm taking everything out on you. Oh, how nice for them, right?
Right. You showed up at the right time.
Yeah. And so it's one of those moments where you have to ask yourself, how important is it? Because I'll give you an example. For 25 years, my definition of success was having a hot tub. And what that meant was, I owned a house and I had enough extra money that I could throw it away on a hot tub, right? And so I actually got my hot tub this year. And I ordered it in September. And then they told me I couldn't have it. They said 6 to 8 weeks, and then 8 weeks turned into 12 weeks, turned into January. And so, I'm sitting there each time going, and then it finally arrived.
Sure.
And then the electrician said he couldn't install it for 3 weeks.
Wow.
And then he called me the day before and said, oh, it's too cold tomorrow. I'm not coming. And I'm like, no, you're coming.
Right.
Like,
I'm getting in a hot tub.
The whole time I had been doing this thing where I would get upset and be like, I can't have it, right?
Yeah.
And then I would say, no, you know what? It's just a hot tub. There's supply chain issues. It's not about me. Everything's backed up. And I've waited 25 years. Another month isn't going to kill me, right?
Sure.
And that's, it's that thing. And so when he said, I can't do this, then I was like, well, we have a problem, because I promised my friends if they would watch my dog for the next week that they would have a hot tub to sit in. And if you don't come and install it, then there won't be a hot tub. So could you please? And
we're like, I don't break my promises.
Right. I don't break my promises. And that was, and so he did. But, this is one of those things where I could have become a Karen. I could have gotten on the phone and been like,
sure.
And I'm certain that the other people were doing that, because every time I called the customer service line to find out what was going on, they were very stressed.
Sure.
And it's like, it's not your fault. I understand it's not your fault. I'm just trying to get an update. Right.
Right. Yeah.
Reset my expectations. That's really all.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, look, setting those expectations is definitely huge. And when you've got an expectation that isn't met, there's this thing, right, that we get into.
Well, so here's the thing. Unmet expectations only matter if you're already empty.
Tell me more.
So if you are feeling full, if you have taken care of yourself and you're feeling like life is good and you've had enough time off and you've had enough self-care and you've let in love from people around you so that you're full to overflowing, when somebody doesn't meet your expectations, it's inconvenient, but it is not a problem.
Sure.
You're just like, oh, well, that's disappointing. Whatever. And you move on because you're already feeling full. It's when we feel empty that we are desperate for whatever it was that we were counting on to deliver to us, that inkling and eking of that little bit of energy, that little bit of love that we needed to keep us moving forward, because we're on fumes.
Yeah.
And if we don't get this, then our car dies on the side of the road, right?
Yeah.
That's the problem. And so, my advice is ask early and ask often. Get what you need, take care of yourself, ask for help when you just want it, not just when you need it. We all wait to ask for help until we need it. We're desperately like hoard people owing us stuff.
Yeah. What's up? Yeah. I mean, people owing us stuff, or there's a couple things in this, right? One thing you said in this piece was let in love from those who are around you. Are there people that aren't doing that? Would be one. And then I guess they might even kind of commingle, right? By asking for help and allowing others to help you before you need it. Because if you wait for that last second, there again becomes some type of anxiety riddled scenario.
Well, it's not good all around if you wait till the last second. Waiting till the last second makes you desperate. Which then doesn't give the other person the option to say no when you ask for something. You are literally manipulating them, saying, I am going to die. I'm going to fall apart. I'm going to have a nervous breakdown. I'm going to, collapse in a puddle of tears if you don't do this for me. That's emotional manipulation. Mm-hmm. And, if you take care of yourself, you never have to get into that state. So everyone around you becomes safer because they know that when you ask, you can hear their no, and it's not a big deal.
Right. Yeah. No, I get that. So, you just got started in this line of business and, this practice, right?
No.
Let's hear your story, Kelle. Come on.
I've been doing this my whole life. My mother raised me in the New Age movement, so I've been doing this stuff since I was 5 years old. She brought home Est when I was 6. Est was a precursor, the not kinder, gentler version of Landmark, if you've ever done the Landmark Forum.
Oh, I haven't, but I actually heard that that's actually kind of rough. So you're saying there was like
Est was worse.
Well, I don't know if you want to, give a little bit of detail on that then. That'd be great for people to hear.
Well, so, the Landmark Forum, the Landmark, I don't want to bash the Landmark Forum because it's not a problem. It's a accountability piece. It's about building your integrity and building your personal power and things like that. Mm-hmm. It has a lot to offer. And the guy who created Est before it. It was the thing that he did, that he morphed Est into the Landmark Forum. And as he did so, he was German. And so he shifted some of the stuff for an American audience when he did the transition. And so, my mother went to one of the very early versions because this was the mid 70s and brought it home and told me, taught it all to me because, we were partners in life. That was how my mother treated me.
Sure.
So, I'm not messed up at all, really. So she taught it to me, and she did that. She brought home, we didn't watch a lot of TV when I was a kid. We listened to a lot of cassette tapes on personal growth and development. That was all we did. And yes, I'm dating myself again. Cassette tapes.
Well, first of all, that's funny, right? It wasn't cassette tapes of me and my children, and it hasn't been that long, but putting the Zig Ziglar tapes on for them, right? Like for them, and then again, not tapes, but playing that audio for them, and then we're like, are we gonna listen to that Zig Ziglar guy again, right? Type of thing. So you grew up in this space, surrounded by it. If I recall correctly, just from reading some of the stuff, like into tarot cards and all this stuff from a young age. Fill us in a little bit more. What's kept you driving and kept you in this space?
Well, so, I've tried, I started doing this work professionally in 1998. I had been doing some of it stealthily in the real estate training world back in the earlier 90s. But I started doing this level of work and doing energy work and energy healing and psychic work and things like that in the late 90s. And I have to tell you, it was very hard because a lot of people weren't really aware at the time. The spiritual awakening has amped up dramatically since 2016. 2016 was a watershed year. And everybody, basically anybody who was a Democrat in 2016 got a wake-up call that was like, oh, crap, we can't control the world around us. We have to control the world inside of us, right?
That's funny, yeah.
And so there was a huge awakening then, and then the pandemic has done it even more. And so I tried to do other things, and just my spirit wouldn't let me. Every time I put together a resume, because I've got a lot of skills in other areas, right? I've got a lot of marketing skills and internet marketing, whatever else. And every time I tried to put together a resume, my body was like, oh my God, I'm dying inside. I can't.
Look, putting a resume together is just like the worst. You're like, it's like.
I couldn't do it. I'd get the resume done, and I would go up on Monster, and I'd pick out some jobs, and I would try and do it. And I was like, nope, can't do it.
That's funny.
And I'd throw it away, and I'd go back to what I was doing. And
sure.
And it was. It's not what I do; it's who I am, right?
Yeah.
And it took me a long time for the world to catch up to what I was doing. And, I have this habit of being way ahead of my time. I had a podcast in 2005. I built out a custom learning platform in 2005.
A lot of work. A lot of work.
Saying, I tend to be ahead of my time. And so it took a while for everybody else to catch up to where I was and what I wanted to be doing. And so
Sure.
now that that's happened, I'm super excited.
Yeah.
Now it's like, okay, everything that I've been working on is ready.
Yeah.
So I've actually written my book.
There you go.
I'm launching it in the next week. So
That'll be awesome. We're definitely going to hit on that. But I mean, the other piece that I thought was kind of entertaining, and at some point during your journey, you fell into a group of shamans, right? And I definitely wanted to hit on that, right? It's just kind of like the indigenous spirituality.
I can't say that they were indigenous shamans.
Okay, sure.
They were eclectic shamans, but
yeah.
So here's the thing, right? I had built the American dream. In my life, in 1998, I had the trophy husband, the big house, the successful business. I was volunteering. I was president of Habitat for Humanity in my area, and I, from all intents and purposes on the outside, I looked like I had it all. My life was perfect, and I hated my life. Mm-hmm. And so I divorced my husband. I sold my business. I made him take the dog even. I sold the house. I quit the nonprofit, and I moved out of state to live with a bunch of people I had met at the Renaissance Fair, who, as it turned out, all turned out to be these eclectic shamans.
That's funny.
Or, witches or, whatever, right? And so I ended up, over the next 4 years, really getting inculcated into ritual and healing practices, and we did a lot of work on each other. We did a lot of rituals together. We went all over the place to different festivals to learn from different people and to participate in different events. And I learned how to do ritual with large groups of people. I was on ritual teams that ran entire retreat events and things like that. And so my whole life just sort of blossomed at that moment. Sure. And when that was done, I actually ended up on Walkabout. I was
out in Australia.
No, technically I went on Drive-About. But the term walkabout in the Aboriginal culture, that basically means to walk out into the world until you find yourself. And in Aboriginal culture, they live in the desert, so therefore you go out into the desert. We live in the U.S., and so we go out in our cars, right? And so I gave away everything I owned except my car, my camping gear, and some clothes, and a couple, like a tarot deck and some jewelry kit making stuff, because I made transformational jewelry, and I hit the road. And
awesome.
I went 14,000 miles in a year, and I spent the entire year homeless. So I lived on $350 a month of unemployment insurance and the kindness of strangers. And each place I stopped put me to the next place.
Sure. Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's awesome. No, I love it. Right. Being able to do that is so much fun. Just kind of throwing it all out, and going and just being, right. And realizing, I don't know, that the world's not as bad as it's been painted to be, right? That there's a lot of people that will, you can find friendship and you can find some cool scenarios, and you and I are like 100% proof that you're not going to end up in somebody's trunk, right? Don't get me, but, so I love that. That's a lot of fun. So let's talk a little bit about, shamanism, witches, ritual, what's happening, in all of that. Tell me some more.
Big question. So I'm not exactly sure what aspect you want to learn, what you want to know about.
Like, how's it, what are you teaching out of it today? How's that working into what you're doing today? Your book, any of it really?
Yeah. So, what I teach is actually the intersection of personal growth, energy work, or metaphysics, right? and energy healing practices, wellness practices, right? And those three worlds generally don't intersect. If you go to do research, if you start learning things, those worlds are pretty insulated from one another. They don't tend to cross over, which is kind of terrifying because you actually need all three of them in order to be able to do spiritual growth. And so what I've done is I have married the three into a cohesive process that walks people through 25 years worth of personal growth work in 2 years and 4 months.
Wow.
People get intimidated by that. They go, holy crap, what the hell, right? And it's really not as bad as it sounds. It is, in general, the biggest problem in doing spiritual growth work is, one, defining what the problem is that you're having, and then two, finding a solution to it. And that process takes about 9/10 of the time it takes to do your spiritual growth work. The time it takes to actually do the work is about 1/10 of the time, which is what I've brought it down to, right? So I've brought it down to just the work that works.
Work that works.
And helping you define the problem and find the solution and putting that together. So I take that 9/10 of the time out of the process by helping you to really get clear about what the processes are that you need to do.
Sure.
Yeah.
What are you finding in this work, right, that is the primary problem? I guess examples I would think would be, I don't know what my purpose is, Kelly, or I don't get along well with others, or I like spirituality, but I also like things, right? So where are some of these problems? And again, I guess if we could just throw a line at shamanism while we're at it.
Yeah. So let me be clear. If you ask 100 shamans what shamanism is, they're going to give you 100 different answers. So I want to define what type of shamanism I do to begin with, which is I do transformational shamanism, which is about evolving your identity, removing limiting beliefs, eliminating limiting assumptions, and being able to clear out the coping mechanisms and the pain and the upset that has kept you stuck in place, right?
Yeah.
So people ask me all the time, what's my purpose, right? And your purpose is the fullest expression of your authentic self. That is what your purpose is. And so, it is about clearing away all the stuff that's been placed on top of you so that you can uncover your authentic self so that you know what that purpose is, right? And so, my purpose on the planet is to facilitate change. And I'm also particularly good at taking things down to the core nugget and making them more efficient. And so, I efficiently facilitate change, right?
Nice.
But it took me years to figure that out, right?
Yeah.
Because how do you see that in yourself? It took me a long time to find that. And so, I do hear those questions. But in terms of I'm trying to remember the question you asked me. What is the most common question that people come in with? What's the common issues? So the people that I work with tend to be overachievers. And so they're perfectionists and control freaks, and they get more done in a day than most people get done in a week. And they've got a plan and a backup plan and a backup plan for their backup plan. And, they're always going, doing. And they're exhausted and overwhelmed and stressed out. But no one would know because they always look perfect. Right. And so those are my peeps. Right. Those are my peeps because that's who I was, right? And so I know the path out of that particular hole, right?
Sure, right.
So it's, it's complex. It's a complex, combination of things because there's anxiety and there's worry and there's dread and there's self-doubt and there's, imposter syndrome. I feel like a fraud, even though they may be very accomplished. In most cases, they are very accomplished, right? But they just can't give themselves credit for it. I worked with a client the other day who's very high up in a Fortune 500 company, And I was like, you need to go job shopping. She's like, what? I'm like, you need to go job shopping. I'm like, the great resignation is here. There's a million openings for people. That's hard to find people. And you've got people in departments within your company fighting over you. You need to go job shopping.
Right.
I'm like, not because you necessarily want to change jobs, but because you should be making more money.
Right.
And you're not going to get that internally unless you have that external offer. Right.
Yeah.
And so, but she was like, oh, but I'm kind of a unicorn. I do a little bit of everything. And so there's no real job for me. I'm like, that means you're more valuable, not less.
Right. Right.
Oh, that's the other piece, is that they often have a hard time not seeing their value. Right.
Yeah.
And so, these are things that I work with people on. It's about being able to see your value, being able to see what you bring to the table, being able to not feel like that fraud, to be able to own who you are.
What do you think it is that keeps people from being able to see their value? I struggle with it. Right. Oh, yeah. I do. I know my wife does, I mean, and most people that we talk to, you go up and you're like, yeah, what are you really good at? Well, I do things. I do a couple things here and there, but I wouldn't say I'm good at it, that kind of thing, so what's keeping somebody from recognizing their greatness?
Well, the first thing is that the average American child receives 437 negative messages a day to every 3 positive messages they receive. So that'll set you up for a little bit of not good enough. And then add to that the religious overtones in the country. The dominant religion here in the U.S. being Christianity, and the only the meek shall inherit the earth, and you must be humble, and you can't speak well of yourself, and the original sin, and we're all originally flawed, and we're all inherently evil, and we have to overcome the evil. I mean, it's a miracle anybody feels good about themselves.
For sure, right. I feel bad about myself just listening to how I am just now. For sure. Yeah.
There's a story that Pema Chodron tells on her Getting Unstuck CDs that I love. And she said that, I think it was Thich Nhat Hanh, it might have been from Rinpoche. I'm going to screw up his name, but maybe it was I think it was Rinpoche. But the thing was that, he's Buddhist and he's coming to America, and he was really confused after, all these people got up and were like, not good enough, not good enough, not good enough. And he just was so confused, and he had to have somebody explain to him why everyone was so negative about themselves. Because in the Buddhist culture, in his country, in Tibet, the core assumption is that you are all perfect. And therefore people don't have these issues. And he was completely lost. He was like, what are we talking about? What is going on here? Yeah. And it had to be explained to him. And I'm like, yes. And see, that's how it's supposed to be.
I got it.
Yeah, but it's easier to manipulate if we're unhappy. I mean, look at all the ads. First they tell you that, when I was a kid, nobody cared if your teeth were yellow. But now it's like, oh my God, you have to have a whitening thing. It was never a thing, but the marketing people make it a thing so that they can sell you a solution.
That's right. Well, got to make a problem to solve.
Right. And so that's, I wonder why we hate ourselves and our bodies.
For sure. No, I get it.
The television and the media to do it.
I get it. So helping them to see their value, these overachievers, and you're helping them. I love it too, because I think you say, like, where, let me find it. Yeah. You're getting there quickly, right? And so this is for you're the person for the overachievers to get there. And so now you talk too about the length of time being around 2 years, a little over 2 years, you said.
Yeah.
Right.
First program through was 4 months. Mm-hmm. But in 4 months you get through the first stage of healing. So I don't know if that's what you were going to ask, but I wanted to clarify that. No,
that's fine. I just that this relates to your the Sacred Power and Purpose Mystery School is my assumption, right? For your 2 years of schooling.
Yeah, so
education.
it's 3 programs. So it's the first program is Inner Peace 101. It's finding emotional safety. And that's the very first step that you have to do in order to heal, is to find emotional safety. Because if you are spending your entire life waiting for the other shoe to drop, being anxious about what's going to happen, worried that somebody says, oh, can I talk to you after lunch? And you're like, oh my God, are they upset with me? What did I do wrong? And you're going over everything that they ever said to you. And you're like, right?
You mean that's no way to live?
And is that they're going to be upset. What's that?
Yeah. You mean that's no way to live?
No. So, but if you spend all your time, if your entire brain power, if all your bandwidth is taken up doing that process over and over and over again throughout your entire day,
Right.
when you're asked as part of the personal growth process to leave your comfort zone, which is required in order to grow, then you're going to look at that and go, oh, that looks uncomfortable. I've got enough discomfort. I'm good. Thanks.
Right.
And you're going to resist the whole process because you're already full up. Your bandwidth for discomfort is full. And so the very first step that you have to take is to find emotional safety. You have to get to a point where you feel, where you're like, I'm okay on a day-to-day basis, where it's like, I'm not going to freak out. I'm not going to make things wrong that aren't wrong. I'm not going to, make the backup plan for the backup plan. I'm going to figure it out. Right. And so when you can do that, and the first 4-month program that we do, it cuts your stress levels in half. I mean, they're just gone. People come out the other side saying, oh my God, I can't even imagine thinking about life the way that I thought about it when I came.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's stage 1. That gives you the space in order to be able to actually do the next step. And the next step is to solidify your sense of self, which is also your energetic container. It's also your personal power. But it helps you to feel solid as a person. So if you want to check whether or not your sense of self is solid, here's a great indicator. If you need to make a decision and do something for yourself, a big thing for yourself, not for others, because we're much better at this for others than we are for ourselves, not for work, because we're much better at that there, but for us, if you have to make a big decision for yourself, and you have to spend a lot of energy going, build up energy, build up energy, build up energy, build up energy, and then pull the trigger on the decision immediately or else all the energy drains back out again. That's an indicator that you do not have a solid sense of self. Because when you have a solid sense of self, when you have control over your personal power in your own life, then you can make your decision and hold it for as long as you want. You don't have to build up energy to make the decision. You can just be like, yep, this is what I'm doing. Right.
Yeah.
So that's a good bellwether for that. Right. And that process is about, I didn't say what the first process is. The first process, the finding emotional safety, is about addressing fear and anxiety, worry, dread, self-doubt, inner and outer judgment, and building a foundation of self-support and courage. The second process is about claiming your space, your right to take up space in your own life, setting your boundaries and being able to reinforce them, owning your power, internalizing your sense of value, draining your well of rage that you have from being at the bottom of your own priority list for so many years, opening your heart. We were talking earlier, you said, do people actually not receive love? And yes, they really don't. When you've been hurt enough, you will stuff that hurt around your heart and create a barrier around your heart that keeps you from being able to receive. And so being able to clear that barrier, de-armor that heart, and let energy come in, let love come in, be able to feel loved in your own life. And that will also allow you to love yourself, which is the final step of that process. And so that's the second program. And then the third one is mastering your inner healing. And that's what a lot of people refer to as shadow work. And what happens a lot is a lot of people try to skip straight to the shadow work because we love to skip steps, man. Overachievers, we just love to skip steps. The problem with skipping the first 2 steps is that if you do that and you go straight to the shadow work, if you have a good sense of self-preservation, you will not get anywhere in your shadow work. If you have a crappy sense of self-preservation, which most of us do, who are in this space, then you will re-traumatize yourself.
Right.
And so it's super important to do the first 2 steps first. And then the third step is all about going in and digging out the buttons and the triggers that send you flying, right?
Sure.
Yeah. And pulling those down and pulling the energy out of them so that when they get hit, they're like an oof instead of a ah, right?
For sure. Yeah, look, I think that's really all you can expect. Sounds like you condensed quite a bit into 2 years. 2 years. And I guess if, you've got it in this systematic way and, you've got the bumper, like I feel like you're bowling with bumpers, right? Like you've got the bumper set up there to make sure that that they still make it down the lane, then definitely, that's a lot of that stuff, right? That getting that emotional safety be a priority, right? You got to realize that you're probably going to be okay and you can let go of some of the shit that's been making you crazy.
Yeah.
It's
not just doing the work, it's also understanding the context of the work. My people are thinkers, They want to understand why. Why is it like this? How does it work together? How does everything fit together? How does this fit with that? And how do I get from here to there? And they want 2 things. They want to understand why, and they want results.
Yeah.
And so that's what I focused on.
Sure. Well, so this type of work, and I think that especially even in the coaching and spirituality space, what can I expect as a result from doing all of this work? Because I just want to make more money. Kelly, I want a hot tub.
Yes. Okay.
So,
well, and that's a great example, right? So typically what happens if you have worth issues, if you don't feel good enough, you will often have a point at which you will not be able to make more money. You will hit a set point. And it depends on who you are. I mean, the set point could be $50,000. It could be $1 million. It just depends on what's going on. Kathy, who works with me, she had a client a few years ago who he kept hitting just under $1 million. And he just couldn't cross $1 million threshold no matter what. And he'd been right up against it for years and just couldn't get there. And when it came down to it, what happened was it turned out his mother thought rich people were terrible people. And he didn't want to be a terrible person in his mother's eyes. And so Kathy looked at him and said, well, how about you buy your mother her dream house when you hit $1 million? And he was like, I could do that. And she was like, bet she wouldn't think you're a terrible person.
Right.
And
yeah.
That's exactly what he did. Within a month or two, he had hit the $1 million mark, and he bought his mother her dream house, and she walked around telling everybody how wonderful her son was and how successful he was. Right.
Yeah.
But, sometimes it's something that simple. Sometimes it's a lot more complex. It's, I don't know that I deserve it. I don't know that I can have it. I don't know, right. And there's all this other stuff that goes into it. And it can be pretty complex. I mean, for me, I had to deal with, my father. The only way he could love me was by giving me money. And the only time he would give me money is if I needed it, if I was really broke. And so I kept myself broke for a very long time so that he could love me.
Now I don't mean to laugh, right? But I mean, that's right. Like, I mean, that became like your mechanism. That became your relationship, and that's the kind of the drive, and that's where you stuck yourself. I'm a big fan of Bob Proctor, God rest his soul.
Oh yeah, I love him.
Yeah. I mean,
Bob Proctor in 1992.
I'm so pissed that I didn't go see him live, and just passed, and so I'm upset with myself for not pulling the trigger to go do that one. But he just talks about what you make and what you're saying. Your income is reflective of your level of thinking, your level of understanding of yourself, right? Yeah. So,
well, and yeah, I mean, it's all about really looking at what are the factors that go into it, right? I mean,
for sure.
And for each person, it's going to be different. And, I've boiled these down to very simple things, but I promise you, there were other things in there too.
Right.
So, I do this work with a lot of my clients.
So I mean, there's definitely benefit, and there's material gain through this spiritual work. Is what I'm hearing you say.
Yeah, one of my clients tripled his income.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I mean, I just want to make sure that resonates with that comes clear through to some of the people that are out there. Like, well, you know what? I've got all these other things to focus on. And to your point earlier, if you're the last person that you focus on, like you're probably not focusing on any of this other stuff, and you're kind of going to stay where you are right now today.
Yeah.
Maybe not forever, but you could get there sooner.
If you don't give yourself any priority.
Right.
I mean,
if you don't give yourself any priority, for sure.
I mean, this is the thing. So this is the other messed up thing, is that we've got this cultural message that it's better to give than to receive, which is kind of stupid if you think about it, because it's a binary system. If somebody refuses to receive, nobody can give. So, you literally can't have one without the other. And, isn't giving someone else the gift of giving? Right? I mean, how is this different, right? And
right.
So shifting perspective on that is super important. But it also means that we have a toxic level of giving in many instances. And what happens is we end up giving from our emptiness instead of giving from our overflow, because we never end up filling ourselves.
Giving from our emptiness. It hurts. It hurts, right? I mean, it hurts and it hurts like if you're in that position and you want to give and you have nothing to give. And so giving from that emptiness, like you're saying, it's not a feel good space.
Well, it's not a feel good space for you, and it's not a feel good space for the person that you're giving to, because they end up feeling like a burden. And so when we take the time to fill ourselves up, when we do actually put ourselves at the top of our own priority list, which is where we should be,
right?
Then we have enough energy to give from our overflow, from our generous place, from our place where we are happy to be of service, and where the person receiving doesn't feel like they're burdening you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Kelle, who else other than yourself should be first, right? I mean, not to... Right. I mean, you kind of should be a priority in your own life.
Yeah. Well, I mean, everybody's like, oh, well, I don't want to be selfish. It's like, look, if you're somebody who has been compulsively a giver your entire life, you are completely incapable of being selfish.
Right.
It is not in your wheelhouse. So that is not something I worry about for you.
For sure.
Okay? So,
for sure.
This isn't about being selfish. Being selfish is saying, I'm going to do what I'm going to do, and I don't care what anybody else thinks or feels or needs or whatever. If you're somebody who's a compulsive giver, you have everyone else's needs and thoughts and concerns at the forefront of your brain. What's the problem is that you're totally out of balance. You need to have your own needs and thoughts and wants at the forefront of your brain too, so that you can then balance.
Yeah, I mean, it's what I tend to call it. And I must have picked this up somewhere, but I call it like, you're both the giver, the gift and the giver and the gift, right? You got to give to yourself so that you can give to others. And, if you're not giving to yourself, then you're not going to be able to give to others. And when you do give to others and you haven't been giving to yourself, you're going to get to that rage place that you were talking about earlier. Like, I give it all the time. Blah, I'm pissed at you all for how I feel.
Exactly.
Which I've done to myself.
I had a friend of mine years ago who said, never sacrifice for anyone. And I thought about it for I got really upset about it when he first said it. And then I was like, you know what? That's totally true. Because the moment you feel like you're making a sacrifice, it means that you don't have it to give. And you're going to resent the person that you're sacrificing for.
Nah, that's powerful, right? I'm gonna have to absorb that one a little bit too. I'll mull it and let that one sink in for sure. And the other thing, the shadow work piece, trying to jump into that if you're not ready, and re-traumatizing yourself. I think shadow work's super important.
Super important.
Super important. Very, very, very powerful stuff.
Do it all the time.
But if you're approaching that from without any of these other spaces that you're talking about, it's like tossing, your fine china, I guess, out the window, right? You're like, let's just keep breaking. Yeah.
It's literally walking in a minefield. You never know where the next step is going to take you and whether it's going to blow you up. It's that bad. So, if you do the other work first, then you're prepared. You have the map of the mines.
Yeah.
And you go, oh, look, there's a mine over here. Here, let me work on diffusing that before it explodes. Right.
Right. No, for sure.
That's the difference.
For sure. Powerful. Your book,
Yeah.
You got it coming up. You finished writing it.
Yep.
What's the scheduled date of that to release?
Well, I don't. So I just sent it off to be formatted today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't have a date for that to come back, but sometime in the next week. So today's the 23rd. So by the end of the month,
Okay.
by the end of February, it'll be out.
Okay.
It's called
Okay.
Overachiever's Guide to Nailing Your Spiritual Growth in Record Time.
There you
Quitting your job, turning over your power, or joining a cult.
There you go. There you go. Everybody's always afraid of cults. I'm like, we live in one. It's like all day long. We're in cults. Yeah. I know that I'm preaching to the choir. What, give me a couple tidbits. Why am I picking this book up?
So, we talked about the fact that 9/10 of the time is spent trying to figure out what you're supposed to do and what the problem is. So the book is actually the curriculum for spiritual growth. It explains to you how spiritual healing works. It defines. So I did 3,000 energy scans where I'm looking into people's energy fields and identifying what the blocks are and things that are keeping them from their happiness. And I discovered that there were 38 common blocks, wounds that existed in people's energy fields who were on a spiritual path.
Are you able to see through the camera now? How many of those 38 are showing up in mine?
That would take me about an hour to tell you.
Oh, right.
But yeah, so nobody has all of them. But most people have between 8 and 15 of them at any given point in time. So let me explain to you sort of how this works. When spiritual evolution works like layers of an onion, right? And so in any given layer, there will be a certain number of wounds. And some of those wounds will be consistent through many of the layers. It's like there are spikes for our core issues, right? That run all the way through the onion. But other ones will come and go depending upon what you're working on in that particular layer. And so in each layer, you have to look at what is the block? What is the thing that's going on here? And so in the book, I've laid out all 38 of those blocks and exactly what's going on with those and what are the causes, what are the symptoms, and some starter healing tips for how to deal with them. And then I also have laid out the spiritual traps that people fall into all the time. I've talked about the process of change and what you can expect from it. And when you go to change things on the outside, when you go to change things on the inside, because a lot of people will get right up to the edge of change and quit because they don't realize they're right on the edge. They just get this, they get disheartened and they just give up. And right. And there's stuff around the spiritual stages of growth, so that you understand what stage of growth you're in and what you need to know to get from one stage to the next. And so all of this is built into the larger process. And, it's more of a textbook than a nonfiction book. So, if you're expecting like a business book where you go in and there's 2 or 3 big points and you can buy the Cliff Note version and, whatever, right. An executive summary and be good to go. This is not one of those books.
Right.
This is a book that you go to. It's a reference book, right? You go in, you read the whole thing through and you go, okay, these are my issues. And then you come back to it over and over and over again. Each time you go through another layer of the onion and you're like, okay, I got this and I got that and I got that. Okay, what do I need to do? Right?
Yeah.
So it's much more like that. So if you've ever read Louise Hay's You Can Heal Your Body or You Can Heal Your Life, it's more like that, where you've got a list of what's going on and exactly how it works. So it explains how the process works.
No, for sure.
Right?
It's not. No, it sounds great. It sounds great. When you're writing this book and you're going through it, I'm sure you had revelation or two, aha moments. What was like 1 or 2 of those aha moments for you as you were putting this together?
See, I have a tendency not to write books until I've talked about the topics ad nauseum. So, aha moments, I'm not sure I had a lot of ahas, except I did have an aha because I'd originally built it as with all the images were GIFs. And so they were all like these beautiful moving images, but they were funny and interactive. And then I found out, guess what? You can't put GIFs in a static book.
It doesn't transfer to paper very well.
It doesn't even transfer to readers.
Digital.
So
Readers
don't support GIFs. And I'm like, what? It's 2022. What do you mean they don't support GIFs?
There you are, ahead of your time again.
So there you go. So I had to switch all that out. But that was, when you're writing a book, personally, I don't think you should have an aha when you're writing a book.
Okay. All right. No, that's fair.
Putting something out, you should know it well enough that it's second nature to you by the time you put it down. I don't like to guess at things. I like to tell people what I know.
For sure. That's fair. Well, Kelle, right up kind of here towards the end of it, I've always got like a little section here that I really like in the podcast to spiritual speed dating. Right? Like the whole idea is like somebody's tuning in. They're like, all right, listen, Brandon's got Kelle on. I'll check her out. Maybe that's who I'm going to go check out and do my spiritual dating with. Mm-hmm. So if you're ready, I got a couple questions, 1 or 2 questions I'm going to ask you. You good?
Sure. Let's try it. Let's see what happens.
Sure. Spiritual bachelorette number 1. How would God want us to respond to aggression and terrorism?
So I'm going to start with the idea that we are God. And so, the idea of treating the divine as a parent telling you what to do is I'm gonna pull that out of the equation, and I'm gonna say, you said to aggression and terrorism or spiritual aggression. What was the?
Hold, please.
Sorry.
How would God want us to respond to aggression and terrorism?
Okay, so aggression and terrorism. So. The first thing is you have to understand that nobody can take your power without your permission. And so terrorism is about making you afraid in your day-to-day life. And so you don't have to choose to engage. So I remember right after 9/11, they had these red, green, and yellow alert days, right? And I looked at that and went, that is a load of horse crap. I went, there's absolutely no purpose for that rating system except to keep us scared. And so I opted out, right? And so that's how you deal with it. You look at it and you say, all of life is dangerous. I could get hit by a bus tomorrow. I really could, because there's a bus stop in front of my house. But, all of life is dangerous. You could drop dead out of an aneurysm, and that could happen at any moment. And, nobody gets out of this life alive. Right? So you can't invest in fear of randomness. You can, but you'll be miserable the whole time. Right? So that's really what it comes down to, is just get comfortable with the idea you will die, because we're all going to die. And it's just a matter of when. So if you can let that go, then terrorism goes away. Right? And then aggression is, we talked about that at the beginning of the call, right? With Karens, right? It's
right. Yeah.
Oh, if somebody gets aggressive with me, I'm like, I have a tendency to meta the conversation. So somebody gets aggressive with me and I go, oh, I see you're having a bit of a bad day. Are you okay?
Right.
And they go, what do you mean? I'm not having a bad day. I'm like, well, you're yelling at me. So I figured you were having a bad day.
Right.
How can I help you? Mm-hmm. And then they get flustered because that's really what they need. Right. Yeah. So I tend to meta the conversation with people who get aggressive.
I think that's great. Yeah, look, you got to just kind of, what's the killing with kindness, right? You're down there, you're getting close to the border down there in the South where, bless your heart, right?
Oh yeah, it's real here.
It is real. Yes. Oh, bless your heart. Oh man, I know what you're saying. You stop it. So, Kelle, it's been a blast. Is there anything you might want to share out before we close it down outside of it? And we'll definitely talk about where people can find you. But outside of that, anything else that you wanted to touch on before we close out?
No, I just, hold on. Spirit wants me to say something. Give me a second. And so the message that's coming through is trust yourself. There's a lot of ways in which we have separated ourselves from our sense of what is right and wrong in our own lives, what is true for us and not true, and left our bodies to be able to stay in toxic environments. And when you come back into your body, when you come back into yourself, your body has wisdom that it'll share with you. Trust your gut. Your gut is going to tell you what you need to do and where you need to go. And it will tell you what's right and wrong, and just trust it. Do not let your brain override your gut. Your gut always knows.
For sure. No, that's a great message. Would you say it's like kind of just reclaiming your own authority of self?
Yeah, I mean, it's more of coming back into your body, right? Getting embodied again, because we tend to live in our heads. The brain spins and we're just like, and we lose track of our bodies. And our bodies have so much wisdom.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Where can we send people to find out more about you?
Okay, so I have a podcast. It's called Spirit Sherpa. You can find it at spiritsherpapodcast.com, or you can find it on Spirit Sherpa on any podcast player. And my website is Kelle, Kelle, Sparta.com. And that's the best way to find out more information about me. When the book gets published, you'll get a link there on the website. There's also a free download on the website that is Boundaries for Empaths. So if you are an empath who feels what other people feel, and you often get overrun by other people's strong emotions, which most of my people are, then this will change your life. It's a free download, and it'll totally change your life if you actually do it. You can't just download it and read it and think it's going to, you have to actually do the process. But yes, if you download it and do the process, it'll totally change your experience of life. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah, I'll have to share that out. I know that I know quite a few empaths. I am not one. I'm not, but it sounds fantastic. Kelle, thank you so much for being on today. It's truly a pleasure.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, Brandon. It was great.
Really hope you enjoyed this episode of the Spiritual Dope Podcast. Stay connected with us directly through spiritualdope.co. You can also join the discussion on Facebook, Spiritual Dope, and Instagram at spiritual_dope. If you would like to speak with us, send us an email through brandon@spiritualdope.co. And as always, thank you for cultivating your mindset and creating a better reality. This concludes the most thought-provoking part of your day. Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay fully up to date. Until next time, be kind to yourself and trust your intuition.